just in case.
just in case. Hello, everybody. We're back today, and this is a great day. Of course, right before the holidays, right before Thanksgiving, we have this wonderful, wonderful guest, an architect, uh, Taylor Stewart. Taylor is a wonderful person. We were just talking for a few moments, and I can't wait to dig into his workbook and book and talk about these wonderful, wonderful topics on this crisp Galveston, Texas day. Taylor, welcome. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Christopher. I'm well, thanks. Great to be here on your show as a guest. I just want the listeners to know that architecture, a lot of people think, why do I want to listen to an architect? I'm not going to hire an architect. Why is that relevant to me? But I promise, whether you're in the position where you want to build a new house or do a renovation, or even if you just live in an apartment somewhere, that my promise to you, the audience, is that I'm going to share the single biggest thing that anyone can do and apply without a lot of work or effort into their homes to actually impact their lives in what Harvard tells us is the number one biggest factor in our happiness and our life expectancy and our uh, feelings of fulfillment in life. So stay tuned. We'll get into that. Big promise to you all.
I love it. Now we have a lot of talking points. I'm going to filter through them. Um, so I know you mentioned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about that real quick, and then we can spin off into this other good stuff?
Sure, sure. So, in my book, Conscious Home Design, when I talked about that to people, first they're thinking, well, conscious home design, that sounds interesting, but what does that really mean? What is conscious home design? And that maybe they're thinking their mind is running to some sort of feng shui, system of arranging your space, or maybe they're thinking, oh, it must mean eco-friendly, and some sort of energy efficiency or sustainable materials or alternative building styles, and I like to say that it's actually not any of those things. It can be any of those things, but it's not any of those things specifically. Conscious home design is it works with any style of design. So if you like modern or classic or mid-century, whatever style you have, it works. And it works for any size, whether it's a cottage or a castle. So it's very universally applicable. And it works with the individual. And what we know from the science of human excellence is going to help us feel more well-rounded, more enriched, have more fulfilled lives. And so, we can draw on Maslow's hierarchy of human needs pyramid, which, for those people who aren't familiar, Abraham Maslow was a psychologist, and his work really took momentum from, say, the 1950s through to the 2000s. It just became the gold standard by which everyone realizes, oh, this is what humans need. We're so much more, we're not just animals that need food and
Hmm.
and shelter. We have so much more depth to us. And you can provide food and shelter to someone, but it doesn't mean they're going to be happy, right? It even says right there in our Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of life, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, right? That's we understand this to be a fundamental part of human experience and human existence. So when I look at the average home, that's being built and provided out there, it's really falling into the domain of shelter.
Mm.
And it's not we're not building or designing the spaces to actually intentionally facilitate the experience or the expression or the opportunity to pursue those higher needs and goals that we all have, such as personal development. I want to feel better at something that I do. I want to feel like I'm improving and I'm getting better. I'm becoming a better version of myself. We have feelings of love and connection. We all want to feel loved and we want to be able to give love. We want to have an experience of positive interaction in our lives. and we have creative expression needs. We all feel like we want to generate something, make something happen, like touch the world in a positive way, even if nobody sees it. Might be just a hobby that you do in your basement. It's making model train sets or something. It could be just for you, but that's still a creative expression activity, and it's a natural human urge to do. And so we have these and other higher needs. And so in conscious home design, I say, well, what would a house look like? What would your house look like if we intentionally planned for some sort of activity that fit your goals? What makes you unique? What do you like to do for creative expression? What do you like to do for love and connection? What do you like to do for personal development? Let's shape your home to uh, incorporate those goals, those dreams, those ideals.
This is incredible. I did look at your talking points, but this is so much better because when you're talking about planning for activity, see, in my mind, the clinician's mind, I'm thinking mobility.
Okay.
I'm thinking action, juxtaposed to being dormant or stagnant. I have a religious background too, so I went to cemetery school, seminary, and we, talk about, how the scriptures and how the Creator, right, God, whoever you believe creates, but I
Yeah.
believe it's God, um, designed everything on this earth for growth, everything, and if that's its natural state of being, tying it back to Maslow. And so you look at the trees outside, you look at anything that's good, even mountains grow because there's nothing static about a mountain. It doesn't move visually, but I guarantee you, you touch it, you'll feel vibration. So we haven't even touched the vibration piece, but everything in this universe vibrates. There's a wonderful scientist, he's dead and gone now, but he talked about this, and Dr. Chuck Mishler. And he said that they thought he was an astrophysicist and everything else. And he said that the thinking was that space was void. There was nothing there until they found out uh, through quantum mechanics and all kinds of other science that I can't understand that space is not a vacuum, it's not void, it's actually a substance. And it's like, what? It's a thing. And that you could touch it, that you can move it, that it has mass. And I'm like, okay, that's some different way out stuff. Um, but it actually expands all the time. So even space grows. So with your home, I love this. How can you live in a shelter? That's shocking to me. And apropos because they make these cookie cutter homes and these homes that like mass produced and there's no authenticity to it at all. I'm very curious about it. Could you talk more about maybe the effects of living in a mass-produced home juxtaposed to, say, a home that you design?
Well, so I mean, it's really comes down to, I mean, think about living with only meeting some of your needs, right? If you're the feelings are going to be, well, I'm alive, I'm living, but I don't feel like I've reached my potential. I don't feel like I'm fulfilled. I don't feel like I feel like there's more to life. I feel like I could be more, right? And so think about the most famous painting in the world, Christopher.
Hmm.
What comes to mind? What would you guess is the most famous painting in the world?
Mona Lisa.
There it is, the Mona Lisa, by far. Practically everyone on Earth, if you've heard of any kind of art, you know about the Mona Lisa. So the Mona Lisa just turned 500 years old recently, by the way.
My goodness.
Leonardo da Vinci painted it he began it in the early 1500s, and experts, they're not exactly sure. The estimates range anywhere from 12 to about 15, 17 years. He was working on it. But for to just be conservative, I say, it took Leonardo da Vinci more than 10 years to paint that painting.
Hmm.
And so if we pause and think about that for a minute, everything that we've done, all of our human achievement, whether it's science or art or technology or medicine, it's all possible because of architecture.
Mm.
Without the ability to control our environment, to be able to create space, and dedicate it towards human activities, we wouldn't be able to accomplish anything that took more than a sunny afternoon. Because as soon as the weather changed or the wild animals came, it would mess up whatever we were working on. So, architecture gives us the ability to build upon yesterday's achievements. And so, um, everyone knows that it takes time and effort to become good at something, to become masterful or at least adept at something, to become skilled. That's the formula. It takes time and effort. But what's missing from this very sort of intuitive or common sense formula is that it also requires space. When you dedicate space to an activity, you exponentially increase the chances that you're going to be successful in that goal, in that endeavor. Think about it. If in the olden days when we didn't have plumbing, we didn't have bathrooms in the house, and you had to go to an outhouse. That's pretty inconvenient in the middle of the night. When you wake up to pee, especially as we get older.
Yeah, right, right.
You wake up, and so we have chamber pots. So you just do a pot in the corner and put a lid on it. And then throw it out. The next day, kind of a thing. But still, it's inconvenient and it's not as sanitary as
Hmm.
as as it is today. And so our efforts by dedicating a bathroom, it's much easier for our comfort and our cleanliness, and we're more successful in that, and that in turn boosts life expectancy, the ability to
Mm.
wash and clean and things, right? So so dedicating space to our activities gives us the chance to be successful. And so if you tell me that, you know, prayer is very important to me. And you say, I can't, going to church or going to meditation service or whatever you do, once a week on Sunday, for example, you may say, that's not enough. I mean, if that was food, I would be starving. You can't just eat once a week and survive, right? You say,
Hmm.
so if you want to have a day, a daily prayer practice, and every step can be a prayer, right? If you have the right attitude, you can be a living prayer.
Hmm.
But what's going to help us anchor that practice is by creating a prayer area or a meditation room or a prayer room or a little temple in our home somewhere. And if you don't
Hmm.
have a room that you can dedicate to it, you don't have enough space, then set up, a corner, and screen it off. Make a partition so that that space is only that space. So it has its own energy, because
Mm.
just like the living room is going to produce conversation consciousness, the kitchen's going to produce eating consciousness, the bedroom's going to produce sleep consciousness. These areas, they train us. We have sort of almost a Pavlovian response. It's like our mind associates that area with certain activities. And so just seeing it, just sometimes just reading a menu, just thinking about eating food, and you can start to salivate. And it's the same. So
Hmm.
going to a kitchen can make you salivate, going into your
Hmm.
bedroom can make you yawn and feel sleepy, even if it's the
Hmm.
middle of the day. There's an association with these spaces. You talked about energy for people who are um, comfortable talking in energetic realms. I believe that human intention has power, has force, and it's almost like the way you can charge up a battery with electricity. I believe human intention can charge up a space. And
Mm.
so, if 10,000 people go to a certain location for prayer or for sports activity or for some sort of unified consciousness, then that space, that activity, that temple, that arena, that stadium, whatever, is going to sort of absorb the energy of that intention. And your home works the same way. And so when you dedicate space to your prayer room, it's going to take on that charge. And what happens is when you step into that space, even if you're feeling sort of lukewarm, oh, I don't really feel like praying. I'm not in the mood right now. It's just my heart's not warm, and God, sure, I want to be connected with you. I want to feel like I'm walking in your path, but I'm just not feeling it right now. The act of stepping into the space and putting yourself in the environment will,
Mm,
can help stimulate you, and you can charge yourself up by
mm,
being in the presence of that space. And so it works. We all know about the mind body connection.
mm-hmm,
This is putting the mind body environment connection to work for you in your favor, right? So your mind and body can charge up a space, but then also that space, when you go there, will send that charge back into you. And so it can help you motivate. It can help motivate you. I know, for example, I bought a pair of shoes just to use at the gym with my personal trainer.
mm.
And I never wore them for anything else. They were just my gym shoes in my bag. And one day I was out and I needed some shoes, and I didn't have anything but my gym shoes. And I had just come from a very deep meditation service,
Mm.
and it was Sunday, and I put the shoes on, and suddenly I was like, ah! Instead of being introverted and being very calm and peaceful, I suddenly was like energized, and was like, and I started jumping up and down and jogging circles around one of my friends who had come out of the meditation service with me together. And I was saying, hey, how's it going? And
Oh my
suddenly
goodness.
my shoes they flipped the switch, and they turned me on to, like, workout mode.
Yes. Oh my
And
goodness.
so things really, we can really charge things up with just the energy that we have when we engage with it. So our homes are like that. If for those who are comfortable talking energetically, if you want to just keep it pure in the science that, science is still discovering things. So we're talking about things that
Yes.
that are sort of somewhat discovered and somewhat undiscovered. And so there's a little bit of faith or guessing there. But stuff that we have definitely quantified is that, association, right? The Pavlovian response. So that's, I like to stay grounded in science, but I'm also willing to take a couple of steps sideways and get into the energetic things too, because it's real, it's tangible, just like the placebo effect. It's like, wait, it's not even medicine, but yet 30% of the people, when given the placebo, have an experience of healing, and it's like, okay, that's mind over matter. That's a belief system. So there's something to that, even if anyway, I'll leave it there, Christopher.
I love this conversation. Taylor, this is amazing. This is way more than I expected. Now, I'm going to say this, and I love to dance. I'm not a science guy, I'm more of a theology slash, pseudoscience guy when it comes to psychology and stuff. But let's just dance a little bit.
Okay.
I used to live in an area in Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley. Beautiful,
Beautiful. Yeah.
picturesque mountains. I lived right below the Appalachian Trail. I would see hikers come down and get
I have
rides
I have
and
property in Virginia on the Appalachian Trail myself,
oh, well, you know
even though I'm
exactly.
in Vermont now, but I also have property there. Yeah.
Well, I lived in a little bitty town you may have heard of called McGahkeysville.
Okay.
And it's right off of Washington I mean, National Park, and the Shenandoah National Forest is between those points. And a great ski lodge that I used to love and work at called Massanutten. And so that's where I lived for about 4 years. And there it was interesting because in that area there were two battlefields from the Civil War. Now this is going to tie into the energy stuff. In between those battlefields, I lived in a little town called McGahkeysville. I will tell you that throughout that whole valley, or at least the top half of the north part of it, a lot of trauma happened during those times,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so I was leaving or entering rather into the area over Afton Mountain over Charlottesville one day. And I literally felt, Taylor, a weight press on my shoulders as I was entering into the valley.
Sure.
And it stunned me. It stunned me because I'm thinking, I can feel this. And so it felt like a depression, like I was putting on literal weights on my shoulder. And I thought, this place has some resonance to it.
Hmm.
There's some resonance. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Enter architect Stewart. Uh, and you're talking about these things about the house, and I'm thinking, this is perfect. I knew I felt something. And so I agree with you 110,000% about this. Charged up spaces. Dr. Maya Angelou said this once that words are things and they get on and hang on walls and places and get on your furniture if you say them. She's saying the same thing
Hmm.
that you just said. And
Hmm.
I love this because when you create sacred spaces, I love the sneaker reference, the idea that this space is just for one thing. I know I used to work in clinics and stuff all the time. I had patients who would have difficulty sleeping. And so I learned to go to sleep hygiene. Hey, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? Tell me what you're doing before you go to sleep. And tell me what you're doing, this and that and the other. Doing some detective work. Client didn't know it, patient didn't know it. But they were doing everything wrong in the bedroom before they were getting ready to go to sleep. They were working from home in
Right.
the bedroom
Right.
with their laptops on their computer,
Sure.
like in the bed. I'm like, don't do that anymore.
Turning the brain on, right? It's creating
Yes,
a lot of beta waves in the brain.
yes.
Yeah.
And so people were using their bedrooms for office spaces and all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. It created a lot of sleep disturbance. We had to
Sure.
undo that. And so you're just validating everything I thought. I'm so intrigued. Oh, let's push forward because I think this is now, how does your space, I know you touched on it, but your space charging up your body? Could you speak more about that? Because that really thrills me.
Well, um, there's a metaphysics there and I don't know the math, of
Hmm.
like how much if you say, well, if you spend this much time with this quality of time, in that space, with this intention, it's going to charge it up to some level. We have science probably could, but we haven't been able to quantify that and set up a meter. Like we can test a battery and see how full it is and know how much life we're going to get out of it, how much energy it still has
Hmm.
invested in it, but it's not the same with with our spaces. We just know from experience, like there's a benefit of going to places of spiritual pilgrimage because so many other people have gone there with that intention. It's like in the Tour de France.
Mm,
In the Tour de France, they're all racing on their bicycles, through all these mountains and curvy roads and stuff. And they like to bunch up in a pack because the
mm,
people in front are defeating the resistance of wind. And the people
mm,
that are behind them, they call it drafting, don't have to
hmm,
pedal as hard. They can just get in the slipstream behind the people in front. And so I feel like when you go to a place that's thousands of other people or hundreds of other people or even one other person, where two or more are gathered in my name, it says,
mm, mm,
then you're in a sense you're drafting, and you're
mm,
creating momentum. There's a that they say one and one isn't two. When there's a quantum synergy, one and one is 11, right?
mm,
So it's something along the lines of that, right? But I don't have, the numbers. I don't have the math to show to sort of really quantify that,
mhm,
experientially. It's going to be an individual thing. But what we do know is that dedicating space to an activity increases your chances of being successful in that activity. And so I want to say, well, what activities are meaningful to you? What
mm,
activities do you like to do? And let's create space. Let's create opportunity for that in your life. Yeah. So in my book, I talk about these things. I go through these ideas very thoroughly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a light read. You can read it in about an hour. It's not full of jargon. It's not all architectural, technical mumbo jumbo. It's very accessible. I wrote it for anyone with no who didn't know the difference between one wall and the other to be able to read this and get good value from it. But
Mm-hmm.
then I took those ideas and I hired someone who has a master's in social work and is a
Mm-hmm.
licensed psychotherapist. And I
Mm-hmm.
had this person read the book, and then working together, we went through and we created a workbook where we have these exercises and worksheets that people can do, and it extracts all that information out of you, because
Nice.
imagine you wanted to, move. You're going to move to a new home, or you're going to build a new home, or you're going to renovate your home, and you've got your wish list. You have a list of things that you want and you're looking for. But this book is going to ask you the questions that you didn't even know to ask. The questions
Mm.
about human excellence, the things that, we're definitely going to give you the things that you want, but we also want to make sure that you haven't left something a stone unturned. It's my
Mm.
job because I live and breathe in this world, and I'm all about the whole ecosystem, of the home being, consciously designed to serve all of our higher needs on Maslow's, not just our physical needs of having the right amount of bedrooms and a kitchen family room connection. It's a
Mm-hmm.
home can be so much more than that. And it doesn't require more space necessarily. You don't have to make the home bigger. You don't have to have more budget. It's just how you work with and how you design and how you lay out the space that you do have. So that's sort of the way I like to apply it. Take these big ideas and put them directly in action for each individual. And it's going to look differently for different people based on what activities they like to do, based on what their values are, based on what makes them feel like they're alive. What what
Mm-hmm.
what sparks their individuality, right? So that's what conscious home design is all about.
I love this. This is a great conversation. I was talking to someone else a while back on another show. They were into home design, interior design,
Yeah.
and they did some things that were interesting also with that. And I was looking at this individual, kind of like I'm looking at your space, and I said, you know what? I love your space. I said, I kind of want to be there. I feel drawn into it. And then she said, well,
Welcome.
she designed it that way, and everybody comes there and they want to hang out.
Yeah.
And ironically, you mentioned it already in the kitchen. And so,
Oh, yes.
so
Yeah.
could you speak a little bit more about that? Because I thought that was amazing. You said the cornerstone of kitchen is cornerstone of healing. Tell
Yeah.
us more about that.
So, um, a lot of people will say the kitchen is the heart of the home. And I look at that and I think, well, I actually think that in the context of conscious home design, the kitchen is really the cornerstone of the home. The heart
Mm,
of the home is really a family center. It's a place where we tell our stories. It's where we pass on our traditions and our values, right? And so sometimes that does happen in the kitchen. Some people are hanging out in the kitchen, they're spending a lot of time there, and good conversations are happening there. But the kitchen is a supportive structure as opposed
mm,
to it has a function, to produce food and nutrition and love and nurturing for the family or for yourself if you live alone. Um, and so the place where you really, the true heart is the place where your values are going to be. So I just make a distinction that sometimes people call the kitchen the heart of the home, but I would look at if those people are calling it that, I would look at the activities that are doing there, and they say, "Oh, it's the place where we always go to talk about our personal stories, and it's a place where we hang out." And I say, "Okay, well somehow that's happening there because the true heart of your home hasn't been designed in a way that's welcoming for those activities,
mm,
because the heart of your home is not food. Food
mm-hmm,
is not the biggest deal. Food is a big deal in our lives. We come together around Thanksgiving, which we're having now, but we come together for these meals. But the at this point, the goal is not about eating. The goal is about coming together and
mm.
interacting and having relationships, right? That's the true heart of the home. So the place that facilitates our relationships and our connections, that's the heart. And so I call that the family room or just the heart. of the home. And this really triggers on, I made a promise to the listeners that I would give the single biggest thing that they could do in their home or apartment or wherever they are to impact their lives. And so this segues right into that. I want to, before the show is over, before we run out of time here,
Yes.
Christopher, I want to make sure that I deliver, that I make good on that promise. So Harvard did a study. They started it in 1938, and they have studied thousands of individuals for the past 87 years or however long it's been. They've gone through, and every periodically they would check in with these same thousands. It started with 2,000 individuals, and it went on, and I believe they went to children and grandchildren. They just keep extending it because all the original, I believe all the original are passed on now. 87 years it's been running, and that they were college age when they entered the study. And so, it's all, and the study is still going, which means it has to be, second and third generation participants now. But they started with these, very thorough intake forms, questionnaires, how are you doing physical, physical and mental, well-being, just it's a full check-in, and then periodically over the years they would revisit and do the same check-ins, same physical tests, same mental, emotional, how are things going at work? How are things going with, with your relationships, everything. And so what they found is that the single biggest predictor of people's life expectancy, how long they would live, and how happy they would self-report, say, yes, I'm happy, I feel fulfilled, versus people who said, no, I'm not happy, I'm grumbling about things in life. They found the single biggest predictor of their happiness and their life expectancy, regardless of their ups and downs in life, with their health challenges, their business success or failure, losing jobs or that, any whatever troubles and the ups and downs that we all face through life. Regardless of those, the single biggest thing was the quality of their relationships. And
Mm,
so they also went on to say that's not exclusive to your romantic relationships. That doesn't mean you have a quality marriage or spouse or partner. Single people can be happy and fulfilled too. Relationships is so much more than just, there's so many more types of relationship than just a romantic relationship. Yeah.
mm,
We know this. And so when I was researching my book and I found out about this study, I had to pause and think deeply. Originally I was going to call my book Green Picket Fence, and I was going
mm,
to write about, living the new American dream in a custom designed eco-friendly home instead of the white picket
mhm,
fence, the green picket fence. But as I got deeper into, as I plotted down all of my concepts and ideas and knowledge and put it on paper, I realized, no one's going to read a 40 chapter book about architecture. It's
mm.
too long and too boring. And the world doesn't need to know everything that I know, right? I'm not trying to teach other people how to be architects. People just need to know that I know those things so that I can deliver a good result for them. They just need to know that I'm qualified.
Mhm,
But as I went through this, I realized, oh, these things, there are other people who have already mastered eco-friendly design. There are other people who are already technological wizards and they know how to make smart homes and make your thermostat connected to your water heater, to your cell phone. So it senses when you're driving home, oh, they're coming home from work. We better turn the thermostat up and warm up the house or cool off the house, if it's,
mhm,
and so, these things are great for energy efficiency, but they don't actually move the needle in terms of our happiness and satisfaction.
mm,
They make living more comfortable, but you can have all those things and still feel like you have an empty life, a disconnected life, right? It's
mhm,
the things that actually move the needle and make us happy are not eco-friendly design, although that helps, and it's not super high technology or the best style or fancy bling home, like wow factor, although that helps. It's nice to have those things, but they by themselves will not give us any happiness.
mm,
What will give us happiness is quality connections and relationships. So I said, okay, let me winnow out all this other stuff and focus on conscious home design because that's what actually creates happiness in people. That's what's going to give people opportunity for joy to express themselves. And that's the highest calling of architecture is to help people expand into their greatness. Yes. So conscious home design. So I look at the relationships based on Harvard and say, okay, what is this about relationships and how can I incorporate that into the home? Like if we wanted to plan, if we know that that's going to, the single biggest predictor of how long people will live and how happy they'll be, can we plan intentionally in the design of our homes for relationships? And so I started thinking more deeply about relationships, and I found that we have so many different variables, so many different types of relationships. They're all, we have connections left, right, and center. But I found that any kind of relationship we have is going to fall into one of three broad categories, and those are giving, receiving, or reciprocal.
Mm,
And so a giving relationship is one where we are the primary giver. And so that's going to be with someone that we're taking care of, someone that we're teaching, someone that we're mentoring, someone that we're raising, children, um, even plants and animals, pets that we take care of, or plants that we have to water and trim and prune. That's an example of a giving relationship. And Christopher, you could say, well, sure, but all my relationships are give and take. I give, but I also receive. And that's true. But at the first face of it, it's a giving relationship. Like
hmm
that plant would die without you. It would wither. It depends on you to give. That a child that you're raising, will die without you. It needs you to. So sure, you're going to feel like a sense of fulfillment and a receiving thing, but it's on at face, it's a giving relationship.
hmm
And then we have our reciprocal relationships, right? And that's you and I are having a reciprocal relationship. We're seeing eye to eye. We're peers. The relationships we have with friends, colleagues, coworkers, spouse. Where you can sort of let your hair down and just have an honest conversation about stuff. You don't have to be a role model, and be on your best behavior because you're teaching someone else how to be. It's there's a level of freedom that's there that you have,
hmm
right? So our reciprocal relationships are ones where we're standing on equal ground and there's a give and take. Yeah.
hmm
And then we have our receiving relationships, and that's where we are the receiver, we're the benefactor. And so those are the relationships that we're going to have with our teachers, our mentors, our elders and ancestors, our heroes or spiritual figures. Anyone where we're going to get inspiration, motivation, love, care, knowledge, those are our receiving relationships. And so as we move through the journey of life, we're going to experience different quantities of each type of relationship. For those with young children at home, you're going to feel like it's just nonstop giving, 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 giving until you're exhausted, right? It's like you may not have a lot of time in your life for your reciprocal relationships or your receiving relationships, but over the course of life, we want to make sure that we have a balance of all three. That's what's going to make us feel like wow, when you look back on things, say yes, it was full, I had a rich life. And so uh, I want to look at a house and say, how can we create opportunity for all three types of relationships? How can we bake it into the mold, so to speak, right? And then taking that one step further, I said, well, what would it look like? What could we do if we wanted to build opportunity for all three types of relationship into every room in the house? Not just in the house,
mm
but every room had nurtured all three kinds of giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships. And so, I'll give you an example of what that looks like that anyone, can do. Um, And I'll start with a room that nobody thinks, I promise you, almost nobody is thinking this is a room that's made for relationships, right? And that is the bathroom,
mm
right? I think most people think of the bathroom as a utility space. It's just some place where we go to do our business and um, maybe be alone. It's a place to disconnect from
hmm
people, especially if you've got young children, man, if you can shut the door for a few minutes,
hmm
take a break, the bathroom can be a place, a private space to disconnect. And it is, but it can also be, and that nurtures a self relationship, right? but it can also be an opportunity for your other relationships, which are again also feed yourself. So it is
Mm-hmm.
a self-feeding place. And so what would that look like? So we could have giving relationships in the bathroom. For instance, if you have a window, you might be able to just put a small plant there and it could get some light. And if you don't have a window, if you have a windowless bathroom, then maybe a full spectrum bulb, could shine some light on that plant.
Mm-hmm.
And or maybe even a fish bowl, get a nice little bowl and put a fish in there, a goldfish or a betta fish or something that's beautiful to look at. And every day when you go in there in the morning, and you're like, oh, hi, fish, and you sprinkle a little food on it, and then you have a little connection, with another piece of life, that's
Mm-hmm.
there, and it brings life into your life, into your bathroom. And so, that's a giving. Those two different examples of giving relationships that you can offer in the bathroom. And, many bathrooms these days we're designing, especially master bathrooms, where there's a couple, is you
Mm-hmm.
might have a double bowl sink, side by side sink, so you can both brush your teeth, in proximity to each other, and that's a together activity, or maybe a jacuzzi tub that's big enough for two, a big soaking tub, if you have the
Mm-hmm.
space for it, or a shower stall that has two heads on it, if you have a little shower room. If that's your budget, if that's your lifestyle choices, those are opportunities that you could choose. Um, and certainly for our receiving relationships, while we're there, washing our face or brushing our teeth or preparing our bodies to be presentable to the rest of the world, every day, we can certainly have insight of a photograph of someone that reminds us of loving or caring, whether that's a parent or a family or an inspirational figure, a hero or a spiritual figure, or at the very least a quote, an inspirational quote, something that reminds us that we're loved, that we're cared about, that we have potential, to something that inspires us to stretch and grow into a better version, or the next version of ourselves. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
that. And so, even just 5 minutes in the morning, and 5 minutes in the evening, you have a moment to actually, with intention, use that space to create harmony in your life, to fulfill your connections, your desire for connection with the world. And from that little lift, it's just every step, no matter how small, that we take in the direction of our dreams is going to create a positive feedback loop. It's going to be self-fulfilling. It's going to be self-affirming, and it's going to give us a little bit more energy to do it again. And it builds and it builds. And so, even if it's just a little 2% shift, what happens if that 2% shift is in every room of the house? And every day, that cumulative effect adds up over years, over decades. What kind of impact is that going to have? This compounding interest effect, or the butterfly effect. The mathematician said, "Do the flapping of a butterfly's wings in Brazil eventually set off a tornado in Texas?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, the butterfly effect. It just ripples and grows and grows and grows. And so we want to set up positive ripple effects in our own lives. And that's something that anyone can do. Go around your home, go around the space that you have, and look, do I have opportunities for giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships in my design, in my decoration, in the way I've, laid out my space, and find the gaps. And, you know, if you want, make a choice, rearrange things, set things up, intend those connections.
I love it. This is powerful. We could talk and talk and talk about it. I love this connections piece, and we're almost out of time. I think that you're doing a wonderful service for the world, for anyone who's listening, because we have listeners all over the world who are listening to this, and this is a beautiful thing to be able to establish these connections. I love everything that we've talked about. We didn't quite get to the body movement part. Could you
Uh,
say a minute or two, maybe 5 minutes about that part? Because I was super curious and I put it on my
sure.
little cheat sheet here to talk
Sure.
about how your work or encourages body movement.
Yes, so important, isn't it? For our long-term health is to move the body. Move it or lose it, they say, right? And there's
Hmm.
science, so much science behind this, about the muscle mass and the joints and everything. It's like it's absolutely certain. When we move our bodies, uh, we stay healthier. And so um, I've seen people say, "Oh, well, I have stairs in my home. That keeps me moving." It's like, okay, it does keep you moving. Although it can be difficult if you have physical challenges, such as recovering from a surgery, or if something happens with your body and suddenly stairs are just too much for you to take, then they're no longer doing that. And um, we can do better than that. If you're relying on the stairs in your home for your exercise, let's change that. Conscious home design says, okay, is there some sort of way, that you like to move your body that you actually enjoy? Like a lot of people are building home gyms, in the basement, and they put some workout equipment down there and stuff. And what I find happens is in the morning, if they're feeling pressed for time, or at the end of the day, if they're feeling a little tired, they just kind of close the door on that basement and they don't go down there. They're like, I don't want to go down into the torture dungeon. It's like it's dark, the air quality is bad. I'm gonna go have to make myself sweat and suffer, and I don't have time, or I just really want to just rest and nurture myself, not make myself no pain, no gain. I don't want it. And so, if that's the only space you have, then it's better than nothing because there are times where you will go down there and you'll get value out of it. So I'm not telling you don't do a home gym and don't do a basement gym. But in conscious home design, where we have the opportunity to intentionally create spaces, I say, okay, first off, instead of just putting a bunch of exercise machines, that make it feel like a chore, perhaps that you have to do these things. I'm not talking about professional athletes and professional bodybuilders and people who it's their passion, to develop their bodies. That's a different set. I'm talking for regular people who are having a challenge keeping their bodies in shape, because of their life is focused on other things. For these people, rather than making exercise be a chore, that you have to do, let's find some way of moving your body that you actually enjoy or did enjoy once upon a time. And I can say,
Mm,
what is that? Do you like to do some kind of yoga? Do you like to do Tai Chi or some sort of martial arts workout?
mm,
Do you like to do dance, and whether that's ballet or modern or jazz or just a freeform boogaloo to the tunes on the radio,
mhm,
what do you like to do? What's a type of moving your body that's actually fun and enjoyable for you? Yeah. And so let's think about what that is and then say, is there a way that we can incorporate a space in your home for that activity so that moving your body can be potentially joyful rather than just choreful?
mm,
And the truth is, even when I go and do a chore, when I go to the gym and I just pump iron just to, build my muscles, I may say, "Oh, I really don't want to do it," but afterwards, I'm always glad that I did. The after
yeah.
effect is always positive. But getting over that hurdle, that initial resistance point, that's the goal of conscious home design, is to remove friction, to make it easy for us to achieve our goals, right? So
Mm,
that's a bit about the physical movement space. There's so much more. It's much deeper. Get the book, read the book, get the workbook, read the workbook, do the exercises. If you want, have a consultation call with me. You can get it at conscioushomdesign.com. Conscious is CONSCI, like science, OUS, conscioushomdesign.com. Thank you so much, Christopher. It's
Taylor,
my
this.
joy and my honor and my privilege to bring this information to people. I hope that someone has been inspired and touched and will make a positive shift in their life in some small way by even just putting a photo or a quote of someone that reminds them that they're loved. I want everyone to know that there's love out there for you.
Taylor Stewart, everyone. Um, this has been extremely valuable and inspiring. We'd have to have you back if you're open to that because there's so much more. This is just very needed in our world today, and I'm thankful for your breadth of knowledge. This has been awesome. Uh, Everyone, Talor Stewart, go buy his book, go get the workbook, go to the website. Taylor, this has been a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Christopher.
Goodbye, everybody.